Welcome and good morning to our Coffee and Consulting about expat payroll process of year-end preparation. I hope you have already grabbed a coffee and are ready for the next few minutes where I will provide you a couple of input and information what we think from our point of view the process for the year-end preparation should look like and what might also help you. And then after the couple of slides from our side and the explanation, then there's a chance and the opportunity in the end for you to ask any kind of questions you may have, and I will answer them straight away. My name is Friederike Roeg, and I will go now with you through the Coffee and Consulting event. Also on the right-hand side, you will find the slides for today's presentation. So in case you would like to download them, just download them and then you have it for you. And the questions you have, please put them all in the question box. You need to type them in because all of you are put on unmute. Then let's see what needs to be done now in the last couple of months before the year end in regard to the payroll. And all of you are, presumably now really working in payroll, know that now is the time to really try to make a reconciliation about everything, checking all the documents, seeing that whatever you can do to be best prepared for the year end. We will now not really talk about the normal local payroll. We will focus on the payroll for expatriates. Where in any case, you always have kind of a second challenge on top of it that you have to deal with, usually two payroll, one in the home and one in the host country. And there, in any case, you need to do much more in checking that in both countries you have the same information and you will understand whatever the other person is doing in the other country as well. We've listed down on that slide the different areas which are relevant for the payroll or where we see the payroll challenges, as well as some kind of practical ones, and put down what we think are the kind of success factors. When you use them, you may have a better chance to get everything properly done and being compliant in all the areas. The payroll challenges we see are in the Social Security department, because there you can do the wrong calculations and therefore wrong deductions. Income tax, you can put the kind of wrong tax factor in it, wrong using in Switzerland, the wrong canton, the wrong situation about the family, so you have not really the right picture set up in the payroll. Expenses which you have received from the employee, which might be taxable or subject to Social Security and cannot just be paid as expenses net. So there's the possibility or that someone can make the wrong assumption on it. And there as well, if you have two involved countries, then it does not necessarily mean that the decision or the category in which it will be put in one country is the same category in the other country. So there is a possibility that some of the expenses might be subject to Social Security, but free for income tax, and the other way around. And if you look at pure Swiss situation, someone on a local contract here has no payroll in a different country. There we have also situations where, or allowances or expenses which are either subject to Social Security and then free of income tax, or the other way around. What we see in practice, usually maybe more focused now on expats really, is that expats understand in the end in which country they are actually getting quicker their money. And then they definitely use that. So if they see that if they put in their expense sheet in the home country, and they not do that through the payroll but through the bookkeeping, because they know that they get it then quicker paid, they will do so. Therefore, you always have to check really on in both destinations everything, and see where the employee has put in the expense sheet. The same applies to the credit card payments. In case they have a credit card from the company, then sometimes even they have two credit cards, one from the home country and one from the host country, and they use both. So in the end, you will definitely also need to check on both credit card statements. Exchange rate is currently quite a topic because of the different or because of the situation, as well as the situation with inflation. And we have to see how we will put that then into practice, meaning as well that in case some of the salary might be more into that area, and there you may want to make an adjustment also during the year and not just wait for the year end. But that is something which we just have to look at now, how the situation will be. Payment location is also something. Some expats get only paid in one country, which sometimes I think is a bit easier. And in some cases, you will find that expats will be paid in the home and in the host country, which also makes sense from a practical point from the expat, because he still has some expenses in the home country and wants to have them kind of paid for through the payment he receives in the home country. So that is something you will have to also consider, but you also need to consider whether from an employer perspective that is an issue for you, or makes it much more into administration, or it is just fine. What I think you should try to avoid is to make a change every month, so that the employee can change their mind about how they want to be paid on a monthly basis. We had a client who actually allowed the employee to change the payment situation whenever he thinks the need arises. In the end, on a quarterly basis, for sure, he was sending an email out, and just before the salary payments or salary calculations had to be done, and then advised that he wanted to have it changed. And the fourth time then in the year, when he again informed that he wants to have the change, it was basically more or less back to the situation when he started. I think that is now something. It is nice that you give the employees that kind of flexibility, but I don't think that is really necessary. Usually, we advise clients it's good if you say once a year, and maybe also starting from the calendar year, if calendar year is also the tax year and so on, because then you have everything in one year running the same way and don't have any changes. The success factors where we see which really in the end made a huge difference between not having done it and doing it is really regular checks and comparisons of the payrolls from both countries which are involved, and also having someone in the payroll team looking at the foreign pay slip and making the right assumptions and decisions and seeing whether that what the entitlement is really for, and then seeing whether that is now taxable or subject to Social Security, whatever needs to be done in that country. For that, you need to have someone really who wants to find out and wants to do it right, and not just looking at the paper. I'd just like to need it done, and that's it. The communication is really, I would say, key, and what also helped what we saw when we implemented payroll processes. Then if we compared it to before, it was then much smoother and everybody really knew what to do, and it was not just based on two people whether they make the work really in a proper way, but there was a process in line as well. And even if you think you only have one or two expats maybe and not a huge number of, still then it makes sense to implement that process, because then more or less everybody can take over and knows exactly what needs to be done. And we have later on also a kind of process in a more straightforward process now put down on the next few slides. One of the bigger challenges and things we currently are dealing with is really the cost of living part, where housing costs, transportation costs are increasing, and there is a huge number of discussions going around seeing whether not at the moment the housing costs, but for people being on assignment already, looking at the transportation costs, whether there should be made an adjustment on that because of the year as well. Cost of living calculations are getting also in the area that you think maybe you should not only look at it once, but maybe twice a year because of the increase of numbers and of the differences, and that it's not as stable as it was before. So that might also have an effect on it. The exchange rate is always, I mean, it had been before and is now always a challenge. In the end, you can't make it right for everybody. What we see, what works I think the best is that you set one exchange rate and then really keep that exchange rate for 1 year, and then make an adjustment, and then seeing in case during the year now the fluctuation of the exchange rate was that much, and usually you use a window of +5 -5% or +10 -10%, depending a bit also on the level of income or on the countries involved. That makes, I think, the most sense to it. And there's also here indicated the possible solutions that annual adjustments will be done. And this we see that most of the companies are doing it, that they do make an adjustment and then see that in the next year, the new exchange rate will be indicated and agreed on. So let's look at the process for the year-end preparation. And the year-end, or the process for the year-end preparation, will in the end lead to that the payroll is able to issue the correct salary statement, as well as makes the correct declarations to the various insurances. So the first part is really the compilation of all the wage data in the home country and in the host country. You see here in that sample, we do have a German payslip as well as an English one. And in the end, you need to kind of figure out how you can put that in the right picture and have the right information. Because if you look now at, for example, there's the deduction of health insurance. Now, if somebody in German is in the German health insurance system still enrolled, so in the social security system, plus the health insurance is one part of it, then if, for example, that person is assigned to Switzerland, the lady in the payroll department, or the person in the payroll department, makes now to the right decision and saying, okay, the person gets deduction for health insurance, so the employer pays also health insurance contributions, and that is actually in Switzerland a taxable item and has to be added to the gross salary. And therefore you need, that what I meant with, you need to make the right decisions and the right combinations in the end, that if you see something that you need to think about what effect has it now in our country, whether I need to think now about it from a tax point of view or from a social security point of view. And you can't just take the information as it is from the payslip abroad. You really have to look at it and understand what the each of the items is for. I already said that the invoices, some of the expats really look at where they can get it quicker paid or better paid, and they are not just in the end sending the invoices in one country. So you will need to make the checkup with the other country and see in which country is paid what. So in order that you have really all the information from the employee. In the end, really all kind of payments which had been made for the employee, as well as salaries, bonuses, stock options, shares, whatever other school bills, rent invoices, moving expenses, cars, leasings, temporary accommodation. So everything there is, have a look at whether you find the invoices and the statements. Also, look at the assignment contract and see what kind of benefits and allowances has the employee received or is entitled for. And then if you don't see any kind of payments from all the information you gathered already, then just check again, because usually employees tend to really get everything they have in the assignment contract. It's usually not the situation that they have not asked for it if they had not been entitled to. So check on it, because usually it's then just paid somewhere else. Check as well on the kind of situation about the exchange rate situation, what has been agreed on, and then as well, in case there is a provision in the assignment contract saying that in case the exchange rate is the fluctuation is of plus minus 5% or 10%, we also see in lots of contracts, then you need to make the calculations about it, and also see what has been the reference made to. Is it just the base salary you need to look at, or is it all the assignment allowances as well, or is it bonus and base salary? So, and that makes a big difference. Usually what we see is that it's base salary and bonus. But we also have seen already that it's indicated that the whole compensation, the total compensation, has to be reviewed and looked at. And that will be then at the year end. You will actually put that also in the payroll. Now, if you are now in October, you can't do now for the whole year, but you can already start for the first 9 months to make the first calculations, and then you can still add then on just the month October, November, December. Also see what kind of exchange rate per month you usually should take, whether it is just an average one from Oanda or whatever, or whether it is you have to use the ones from your own company. Sometimes there are these exchange rates given from the VAT team or company tax team. So see what kind of data you need to use. Also, you will have to look at, in case the employee had been working in the home country, for example, then see whether that had been considered already in all the other months from the year, or whether you maybe need to check on that and make the necessary adjustments as well. Also check on whether the information is right about where the employee is residing, as well as where the family is residing. So to see whether from a tax point of view or social security point of view, you do have any kind of different information received, and you might have to change something. There's as well, in case you have people where you need to look at the 25% rule within the EU, where somebody is getting subject to social security. In case, for example, you have someone being assigned from Germany to Switzerland, the family is still remaining in Germany, the employee is working maybe 1 or 2 days in Germany, then see that in case you thought you made a local contract for the period of assignment in Switzerland and wanted to deduct Swiss Social Security for the moment, see that because of if the employee is working for 1 or 2 days or more than 25% in the end in Germany, that the Social Security liability will switch from Switzerland to Germany again. So now is basically the right time point to check on that and see whether the made assumptions are still correct or whether you need to change something. Also, in regard of the hypothetical tax deduction, in case somebody is really on an assignment contract and there's a tax equalization method involved, see whether you have the right numbers, check again on the tax rates used and the family situation, because if there has to be made a change, then now would be the right time point, so that you can still do that with either the October payslip or in the month of November, so that December is really, you know exactly what you need to do and you can put everything in a correct way in the month of December, and there's not much you need then to do beginning of January to make the final payroll. Also in regard of actual tax and social security contributions, including the cross-ups, see whether everything has been properly done. Make a quick calculation and see whether that is reasonable or not, so that in the end you have the right numbers and there are no late time changes, and people in the end in the month of December have too many different deductions, which is you usually should try to avoid as well. And then if we've done everything, all the checkups, seeing that everything has been reported properly, we've done all the cross-ups, we've seen that all compensation elements the assignee is entitled to had really been implemented, the expenses from the host accounting as well as from the accounting in the home country, both of them have also been looked at and put down. Then basically after the December calculation, you then can do the declarations to the social security authorities in home and host country, as well as then issue the salary statement, Lohnausweis, salary certificate, and do all the internal reporting. Maybe one thing as well is to that if you have people who where you look at the 183 days rule, so to see whether someone is subject to income tax in the host country, there as well now in the month of November would be a good time point to quickly check and ask the people to get the calendar filled in and send it over to you so you can have a look at and see in case somebody is tied to the 183 days, you can see whether that person is really necessary in the host country in order to see whether you can make a change in regard to taxation, having the taxation in the host country or not. So that is also something you best could look at now in the month of November. And that would also be now the final step, basically, the issuing the salary certificate. So the process for the year end is basically done with the final document of the salary certificate. Now the next step is basically to prepare for the next year, then to see what kind of changes needs to be done for the next year, and to avoid as best as possible to have any kind of salary payments or corrections being needed to be done in the next year, so that you have really everything in the same year. In practice, what we see as a challenge on top of it is that in case you send someone in a country in which they don't have the same applicable period they look at, like if you send somebody, for example, to the UK, their tax year is not from the 1st of January until the 31st of December. They have a different tax year, and that makes it then also sometimes a bit more tricky. As well as if you send somebody in a country in which they have, for example, payrolls done on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, which also is then a bit more difficult to get everything in order. This was actually from our side now what we thought we would like to share with you and might help you in order for your payroll process and for your company and your situations. It the floor would now be open for any kind of questions from your side. So in case you do have any kind of questions, you have now the chance to actually ask them. And we do have already the first question. If there is an employee who is assigned from France to Switzerland, and if he is remaining in the French social security system, we know that he has to get a French salary certificate. Do we need in the other country also have to wait for that salary certificate to issue ours or not? The answer to that is basically no, you don't. What you need to do is really to make sure you have all the information from the year, but you don't need to wait for the final salary certificate in the other country, because the salary certificate, in case the other country needs to issue it, needs to be done in the way, and the reporting needs to be done based on the legal provisions from that country, and not has not to consider any provisions from any other country. And the other country needs to issue the salary certificate based on their provisions. So both of them won't look similar and won't have most likely the same compensation declared in the salary certificate. So that is correct if it's not completely the same, and therefore somebody doesn't need to wait for the other certificate. The next question we have, we haven't implemented any kind of exchange rate provisions in the contracts. What would you think we should do for future? My suggestion is see whether you will be able to, for example, starting from next year, to implement that in the contract. In any case, do usually a balance sheet calculation or a new calculation for determining the compensation for the expats, then maybe you should there just include that as well and make an adjustment or an addendum to the assignment contract accordingly. However, if you have someone coming back from assignment maybe next year in January, February, then for that person, I wouldn't change anything because the assignment is now over. It was not implemented before, so there is not a big difference now if you would do so. So for those persons, I wouldn't make any changes. But for new assignees, you can implement it from the beginning. And for people who are still on assignment, but will be for another year or two still on assignment, there you can change it as of 1st of January. And for the ones who will come back in the next few months, you will just leave it because they are basically then also under the old rule. And there's nothing wrong if you have now two different situations in place. You usually have, in case you change regulations and provisions, you usually have different situations in a company. So these are the two questions we have received. Apparently everything else is good, and there are no further questions. Now, in case you have later on additional questions, then just let us know, drop us an email, and we will get back to you either by email or by phone. Then I'll just take the last 2 minutes to quickly show you what you still can expect from us. There are 2 more webinars this year. One is about Germany and Switzerland and the differences and the challenges we have. And then end of November, we have our Global Mobility Trends webinar with also a bit of best practice 22 and 23. And with that, I will close today. I hope you have received some more information or got more input for everything. In case you have any kind of questions, as said, the offer is that you can get back to us and we will be happy to answer you. Otherwise, I'll wish you a great week and hope to meet you soon at one of our next events. Thank you for your attention.